Welcome everybody to the Dhaka Forum, the virtual conference on post-COVID-19 emergence. And we'll be talking today about reviving education and intellectualism. We have panelists among us, Dr. Deepu Mani, Member of the Parliament, who's the Minister of Education in Bangladesh. We have Professor Jaideep Prabhu, who's the Professor of Business and Enterprise at the University of Cambridge. And we'll be joined by Dr. Alfredo Spilzinger, Chairman of the World Complex Science Academy and Lord of Brownsville, very shortly. You're all familiar with what is happening to the world. I don't need to explain this. For the last 4.5 months, we have been in virtual lockdown mode, especially the educational institutions. If you look at schools, colleges, and universities around the world, about 1 billion people have been out of these institutions. So that's 60% of the world's total education population. A significant amount. I don't think this has happened any time in the last 100 plus years. Even during Spanish flu, I don't know if schools were open or closed at that time, but this significant amount of time, 4.5 months, the education population have been out of schools. And so what has happened? So 109 countries have had significant school lockdowns. The gains that we have seen in educational attainment in the Millennium Development Goals, reducing dropouts in significant terms in many countries, such as Bangladesh, may be facing challenges. So maybe when we open up in the next month or two schools, we may actually see that the dropout that we have reduced to almost zero, we may actually see that dropout numbers have increased. We have seen research and innovation in universities because research and innovation obviously takes a lot of interaction among students, faculty, and other researchers in the industry, and that has not taken place. So we have not seen the kind of research and innovation that should have taken place. But then there are other sides of the equation. I'll talk about maybe a couple of examples. One from Bangladesh, a 6th grader who has been watching TV, because we actually have taken education from classrooms to TV in Bangladesh. So primary, secondary, vocational, and madrasa education has been broadcast, thousands of hours of broadcast of educational learning programs on TV. And our education minister was a champion of that. So this 6th grader has become an education leader because he watches TV, he goes online to look at assignments, he does them, and then he also has a WhatsApp account where he has a group of friends where he leads education discussions. So he checks up on them and he makes sure that they do their assignments, submits them online, and then they watch TV also. So his mother tells us that where he was really not a very attentive student in classroom, he's become a student leader in terms of education. So that's the transformation that we have seen. Then another story from Harvard. I was just reading in a US journal that a student at Harvard who used to be on campus, when the campus closed down in March, everybody went home. He also went home, but he comes from an impoverished background. So he does not have the right type of educational space in his house to actually look at online courses. So he felt when he was in campus, his roommate, who hails from a fairly rich family, so his roommate and he really did not have a difference because they used to go to the same classes, libraries, internet, interaction, all of that. But as soon as he went home, he felt that there was a gulf of difference. So his roommate went back to Cape Cod with the luxury homes, his room to himself, and the kind of conducive environment to study, whereas he didn't. He had a single mother, crying siblings and all of that, and he was sitting in the living room trying to study, and it was difficult. So that's the divide that we're also seeing. Then we're also seeing new unprecedented forms of research and innovation. So the likes of MIT have come up with very low-cost ventilators. And this happened through online collaboration, some on-campus collaboration, but then we're seeing the likes of video conferencing, bringing people together that have never happened before. So collaborators from many different countries, many different time zones, working in comfort. And we are getting used to the same comfort of interacting online and bringing up intellectualism and research and innovation. So that's sort of the context in which we're operating. Let me ask Jaideep, who's been teaching at Cambridge for a while, professor of business and enterprise. So what has it been like in Cambridge? So you've been in lockdown for several months now, and the interaction that one must assume, that the interaction among students, between faculty and students, amongst faculty, within industry and faculty. So all this interaction really hasn't happened to the extent that it does happen when you don't have this kind of lockdown. So how has that changed the educational environment in Cambridge, and how do you see that influencing how Cambridge decides to open up or promote intellectualism and research and innovation going forward?
Thank you, Anil. It's a great pleasure to be here, first of all, and to be joining you virtually. As you were saying, it's amazing how the world has changed so quickly and been able to now, as we are doing at the moment, bring people from all around the world to have these fascinating conversations. So about Cambridge, it's fascinating that Cambridge, an 800-year-old institution, was built around a certain idea of a university. An idea which was very much about bringing people to one place, having them live there for a period of time, usually 3 years, where they study together with the faculty. So that's on the teaching side. And of course, on the research side too, the idea is you bring people together in labs, they work together under, in this very close proximity to each other, and that's how great ideas come. And Cambridge has prided itself on that model. By bringing lots of different types of people together to one place, they believe that's how ideas develop, that's how new ideas arise. Now we have a situation of lockdown. And when that happened in March, the university really had a very short window of time to do something about how they educate and how they do research. We had students from literally all of the world here in Cambridge, many of whom have paid large amounts of money, expecting to have this traditional type of education. But of course, the buildings were closed. So what did the university do? The university did something that we in the business school have been trying to get the university to do for over 10 years, which is to move online. And luckily, there were the resources to do this. What was lacking was the will. And now we had the will. And immediately, literally in a matter of a week, courses that had perhaps for hundreds of years been taught in a particular way, face to face with people sitting in a room, looking at each other around a table, went online. And we have continued to work in that mode. We did that for a whole term. And now we have our summer break, but we are making preparations for the next term, when we are planning to have students back on campus. They will be living in their dorm rooms as usual. And nevertheless, because we will have to comply with social distancing, what we are planning to do is to have them in the buildings, in the usual seminar rooms and so forth, half of the time. So in that way, we can have fewer people in a particular room and comply with all the regulations. So half the day, people will come into their lecture spaces, meet with the faculty, be in the same room as their fellow students. And in the second half of the day, they'll go back to their dorm rooms and they will learn online. So the big lectures, which are usually delivered in these big lecture halls, those will be live streamed and students will be able to follow them on their own, sitting in the safety of their college room. But we will also have small group seminar type learning where we can ensure that there's social distancing, but with the benefits of being in the same space. So that's a very short response to your question on teaching. Let me just say a little bit on research. On research, now there are some types of research where you have to be in the same space. A lot of the wet labs where they're working with animals or plants and equipment, That has continued to happen even during lockdown because you can comply with some of the requirements. You don't have to have many people in there. You just have to keep the equipment going and keep the labs going. Some of that research has been vital for us in this fight against the pandemic. So that's been going. But now we have gradually started to open other buildings, and research is continuing, that type of research where you have to be in one place. But a lot of our research is, as you were describing it, has increasingly been even pre-COVID of the virtual type, where you have teams all around the world collaborating freely, working on projects which they then try and publish. So that's a little bit of insight from here in Cambridge on how COVID has accelerated certain changes that were already happening in academia.
Do you see that kind of research increasing, the research collaboration across the boundaries? So obviously in the last 10, 15 years, we've seen that increasing because internet has enabled us to do that kind of thing, sharing ideas. But now it's I mean, I've seen it being done increasingly so. So what has been your experience?
Absolutely. I think COVID has only accelerated or brought into sharp focus trends that have been around for a while. So you will know from your time in, in industry and in the West, how since the 90s, since the rise of the internet, we have seen distributed work taking place. First in software, where South Asian countries became part of a global ecosystem in developing software, so-called offshoring, where you could do distributed work. But then increasingly, we see these kinds of networks even in hardware with things like the Fab Lab networks and so forth. You were talking about people developing ventilators in distributed teams. We have seen a lot of that during the lockdown, where you have these micro factories, these Fab Labs all over the place. In India, for instance, there's a collective of 42 of these that have just spontaneously come together. They share blueprints on how to develop PPE, like these face masks, with each other. They do video training. And then these micro factories make this protective equipment for local teams. And then they improve. They're now working on ventilators, as you said. So I think these trends have been there, but the COVID crisis has accelerated it. And I think when we come out of the pandemic, we will have learned so many things, and we will have sort of moved so quickly ahead that I think we will continue with many of these trends in research, in R&D, and also in making stuff, in innovating with software and hardware.
Sure. I call it the COVID dividend. So we are actually getting a dividend out of COVID. So collaboration is increasing, even though we thought that it may not, because we have to do social distancing. But because of these tools, it is actually happening more and more. I remember maybe 20 years ago, I used to do a lot of software development from my company in Boston and New York at that time, and we would offshore. So that was a big thing. I don't think you hear offshoring as much because it's all jumbled together now. And I would have there was really no effective or cost-effective video conferencing at that time. So I would type. So there would be all these chat windows. I would have like 4 different chat windows, one open to Bangalore, one open to Dhaka, another open to Mumbai, another open to Poland, and then I would just feverishly typing away. Now I have several devices. So I have a laptop talking to one conference, and then my tablet talking to another one, and my cell phone talking to another one. So I can actually do multitasking using video conferencing if I have the right bandwidth, obviously. So it's become very, very interesting. May I now go to Honorable Minister of Education in Bangladesh, Dr. Dipu Moni. So Jaideep has talked about the trend, and it seems to be an irreversible trend. So obviously, we are moving towards more collaboration, using technology, using online learning, and using online research as well. So in the context of Bangladesh, and you have pioneered the movement that we've had since March. I mean, as soon as we had lockdown, you decided that you wanted to take education to our Parliament TV. The TV that was there, that is a huge resource in the country that is only used for Parliament broadcast every few months for a few days, and then it stays idle. So you made a very bold and quick decision, and we supported you from A to I to develop massive content. We had a lot of content because about 400,000 teachers in Bangladesh are already interacting online through the teachers portal, and they have generated hundreds of thousands of pieces of content, but they were not ready for TV. So we had to repurpose this content for TV, and you led that process. So how do you see things going forward, both for school education, but also for university education? You launched the virtual classroom just a few weeks ago for the universities as well, across the entire university gamut in Bangladesh. So how do you see that these trends going forward, even when we open up, when it's safe to open up schools and universities?
We were thinking about mostly university education and going online at least partially. But this COVID crisis, and you very rightly said, you named it COVID dividend, uh, and this is a huge opportunity. It has created such a huge opportunity for us to make that transition. And the biggest barrier that was there, the mindset, I think we have crossed that already. And at the beginning, we were a bit tardy in many places. We were slow at starting. But now I think everybody is on, whether it's at the primary, secondary, higher secondary, or at the tertiary level. Everyone is now on board. And so I believe that this mode of learning, teaching, it's going to stay. And this is the new normal, and not just for today, but even for the post-COVID situation, where we will have blended education. You see, at the beginning, there was no experience, no such experience. There was lack of training, but now we are looking at more at quality, and we are now collaborating with many people so that we can bring in quality as well. And so I think this mode of teaching, learning, this has come, and this is going to stay, and this will become a significant part of our education system. And I think this will also help us in achieving many of our goals, which our traditional teaching learning system, face-to-face classes, in classroom teachings, which were not possible through that mode, because we still have many out of school learners. Maybe through this method we can also bring them into the system, and also those who are working and are looking to upskill or reskill themselves. So I think this is going to stay, and we're very much welcoming it, and we're preparing as best as we can, not just to cope with this situation, but also to prepare ourselves for a better and more joyful education experience in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Dipamoni. That was a marvelous transition that you've actually shown us into the future of what in a developing country like Bangladesh, we're also thinking about, not just Cambridge, one of the highly advanced countries, highly advanced education ecosystem, but also in Bangladesh, which is trying to accelerate, trying to leapfrog. And COVID dividend has really maybe given us some new possibilities. And we'll be taking those options on, taking those opportunities, leveraging those opportunities. Now, Dr. Dipamoni, if you would also talk about, I mean, you talked about maybe the new type of skills. You talked about upskilling, reskilling, and you know that the world of job is really changing. It was changing fairly rapidly. We were looking at fourth industrial revolution, and we thought that in the next 10, 20 years would lose a lot of jobs, will also create a lot of jobs, but it will require different skills, different educational level, different type of learning, different approaches to learning. So we saw that. But COVID has really proven that there is something that's much, much faster than fourth industrial revolution. So when we were looking at 4IR, we're looking at maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the road and planning that way. Now we are looking at 2, 3, 4 weeks down the road and planning. So it's basically accelerated 50 times, our planning process at least. So in terms of the 21st century skills that we talk about, so soft skills, some we call it, change in curriculum that needs to adjust to incorporate that, maybe change in our assessment system also. So how do you see that happening in the blended education system that you envision?
You very rightly said that because of fourth industrial revolution, and then we also have other imperatives. Our demographic dividend, as you know, that we only have a very narrow window of opportunity left for that, and so we need to accelerate our process. When we are teaching our learners, we're giving them the knowledge, imparting the knowledge, but there are certain skills that are lacking, that we're not being able to give them that. And when they're, after finishing their university education or at whatever level they leave the education system and they enter the work arena, they're not being able to demonstrate those skills, or they're facing problems while getting employed. So looking for employment while they're looking for employment. So we have been thinking about, and we are changing our curricula now to include these skills. Some call it soft skills, some call it social and emotional skills. Whatever we call them, we need them. So yes, it is very possible, I believe, and I have talked to our educators and experts, that it is very possible to give them these skills through this online education as well this year, early this year. And we found out that our continuous assessment method that we were doing using mobile apps and involving parents, teachers, and the learners, we were getting wonderful results. So I think in this new normal situation, we can use those same continuous assessment methods for most of our subjects. I can think we can do it for all subjects, and so we are already prepared, and we know that it works. And so continuous assessment methods will work, and then the burden of the usual or the normal traditional methods of assessment, we can either, in some cases we can completely do away with them, in some cases we can still continue with them, but not in a big way, because a big chunk can be done through continuous assessment methods. So I think, yes, very much it is possible to do the assessments. And as you said at the beginning, that we just launched a virtual classroom app which has inbuilt assessment methods and exams and everything in it. So now these are very possible, and we can do it. So I think imparting these soft skills, or these 21st century skills, as well as doing the assessments, these are possible, and we are going to do it, and we have already started in some cases to do these things.
Honorable Minister, thank you so much for that brilliant vision of how we can do continuous assessment. And technology obviously is a good aid for continuous assessment. Typically we do an exam at the end of the year, and that's been the traditional thing, but maybe we have been jarred into the future. So that's great. May I go to our third panelist, Dr. Alfredo Spilzinger, the chairman of Rural Complex Science Academy and Lord of Brownsell. Welcome, sir. So you heard that Dr. Deepamani talking about continuous assessment. What I would like to maybe ask you is, going from there, so the continuous process of assessing a student and giving the student access to open learning materials. So typically what happens in a university setting is that there is a lot of proprietary research material that's not shared, and when when an industry actually gets involved in industrial research with academia, then even it gets more clamped down. But what we have seen in the COVID situation, we need open research. We need collaborative research across boundaries. So if you could illuminate us on open solutions and open access to research materials, learning materials, and collaboration across boundaries.
I think that there is no COVID day after. There is no new reality. There is no new normality. And because we are living with COVID, in Kazakhstan is living with COVID-20, and perhaps we are going to live with COVID-21 and 22 in the next years. Our body has 60 billions of viruses. So we are living with these viruses. So there is no day after. The day after is today, or yesterday, or 1 month ago. And what you are saying, it is very important. Information is just the form in which our thinking is developed, is expressed. So we are different. There are two different areas: information and what is research and investigation. It is very good to have good experts in information, but it is necessary to have better investigators, better researchers. Research means a process, a method, and a result, and mainly discussions among students, investigators, and leaders. And what is necessary today is to get enough funds for this type of academies, because universities cannot bring us more than a good degree in some specialty. They have no enough funds for research, for investigation. So the only country that did it was Germany, in which universities are doing a very good research and investigation. But in the rest of the world, there are no funds. And there are two types of academies. The academy that is funded by the governments, and now governments is very much busy with financing health, financing justice, and financing the reorganization of the world during this period. It is like we have been hidden for 2 centuries, dust under the carpet, and someone, COVID, lifted on the carpet, and we saw suddenly a loss of dust during the last 2 centuries, in which academies, in which investigators, in which researchers were not present. So what I am insisting, it is necessary to have funds from big multinational corporations. The IMF, the World Bank, the Health World Organization, and the like, they have more than 15 billion of US in 2020 budget just for administrative expenses. And I know, and I think that it is not fair. The World Health Organization has demonstrated during this period that it's totally inefficient. So we need to get that money for researchers, for investigators on a worldwide basis. It's the only way in which we can survive, because we are just cells in an ecosystem. So if we don't interact, if we don't make our effort to be together and to work together on the new tools that are necessary to develop the world that we want to live in, we are not going to succeed. And a country like yours, in the 8th place on population, it is necessary to devote efforts to get to these people a better life. And also in the American continent, there are a lot of cases like yours. So it is necessary to get from those international, multinational corporations better financing sources. And I think that we have to go together, all the academies, all the people that is working like we are working in the academy on research and investigation, to get enough funds and to work together. If it is not now, when? If it is not we, who? We have to work together. And this is the invitation that the World Complex Science Academy is making to all the world, and mainly in this very important forum. We need funds, we need people working together. That's it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alfredo. So we need funds and we need people to work together.
Yes.
I think a fantastic segue into the discussion that I just wanted to have. Funds, public-private partnership, and multinational organizations providing research funds and innovation funds. Let me go to Jaideep first. Maybe a couple of minutes if you talk about the future of public-private partnership. So industrial research obviously is happening quite a bit in the Western countries. And Dr. Alfredo talked about Germany as a brilliant example, but not enough in developing countries, as we all know. So in developing countries, where is the fund going to come from? Is it going to come from the industry? Is it going to come from the multinationals? Is it going to come from the government? Or is it going to come from by actually creating a new excise charge from the population? So what do we do, Jaideep?
Great question, Anir. So, you know that I am a big believer in frugal innovation. Now, the idea there is that if there are no funds,
publicize it, right? Absolutely. Yes.
And this is because, as we said earlier, necessity is the mother of invention. So obviously, if you have money and you have resources, great, But if you don't, does that mean you don't innovate? I don't think you have the luxury of not innovating. And one of the strengths of South Asian economies, of Latin American economies, African economies, is that they have this ability to do more and better with less. So clearly, we should not forget that. There's a lot that Bangladesh has achieved in the last 40 years by applying this native ingenuity despite the odds and with very low resources, coming up with amazing programs and have moved up the human development indicators and so forth. So I think we should remember that ethos. But that said, I think, there's no doubt that if you can get more resources, obviously, the more, the better. Now, you ask, where does the money come from? Where do the resources come from? I think everybody has to work together. As Alfredo was saying, it's got to be,
what does that mean, though? So we always say that everybody needs to work together.
Yes. So there has to be a lead actor, right? Let me go back to how, in our particular context, Cambridge University, particularly the business school where I teach, we have realized, as you and Dr. Moni was saying, our employers, the people who hire our students, have been telling us for the last 20 years, it increases every day, that what they need is students who know what's in the textbooks and can, do well in exams, but also students who, on the day they join their new job, can be entrepreneurial, can work together with other people to identify problems, to see opportunities, to generate resources, and then to find a solution, and then move on. So how do we do that? We do that in partnership with these employers, these very employers. So we co-create with them. We have changed the curriculum to ensure that not only do the students get what's in the textbooks and can take exams, as has been done traditionally, but also that they're working on live projects that our university, our industry partners actually present the students with. And this is while they're studying, while they're doing their degree, they're getting learning experience on the job, so that when they graduate, they're ready to solve these kinds of problems, and the companies already know that these students have that ability. Now, the companies are also telling us that they want students who will not only have that entrepreneurial ability, but will know how to upgrade those abilities, to learn how to learn. You were discussing this with Dr. Moni as well, that the nature of work is dynamic now. Nobody goes to work for one company for life. Nobody goes to work on one kind of job for life. You're constantly having to upgrade your skills. and you cannot take time off. You cannot take a year off, every 5 years to go and do a master's program. You have to be able to learn on the job. So we have realized in the university, in the
Do
business
you need
school.
a master's program?
Pardon?
Do you need a master's program?
No, in fact, we have realized you don't. Sometimes you can have a degree where it's this kind of flexible degree, as I was saying, where the students can continue in work, but they can come to the university for maybe 2 weeks in their break every 6 months. But everything happens online. But in many cases, they're not looking for a degree. They're not looking for a 1-year course. They're looking for a 2-day program on something very specific, let's say blockchain or fintech or distance working from home, just a training program for which they get a certificate. And those can be delivered online. So we have in the business school, to keep up with the changing nature of work, developed a whole suite of these programs. How did we develop these programs? Again, in partnership with industry. Because industry knows what the problems are. Sometimes they have the solutions, but they need some academic input. And then in some cases, they have the technology that enables us to then deliver these programs. Because often we don't have the budgets. People may think that Cambridge University is a very rich university, and maybe in global standards it is. But in fact, we had zero budget in the business school to develop our suite of online programs. And a lot of the expertise was with corporate partners. So we had to enter into public-private partnerships in order to not only design these courses, develop the materials, but eventually deliver them. And it's very interesting to see that there are now expert companies, there are startups with no link really to universities that are entering the space, but they often themselves have to partner with academia. So those are just some concrete thoughts on how you can almost bootstrap this, provided you bring the right people together on a platform, in this case, led by a university that feels the problem, sees the need, and then has the means to move forward.
Great. So problems from the industry, partnership from the industry, but then catalyzed by academia. So there's very tight, close-knit partnership that actually makes it work. I was looking at this very famous quote by Alvin Toffler, the futurist, that illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So we've all heard this, right? So what does it mean to unlearn? So maybe I will ask Dr. Deepu Mani, Minister of Education in Bangladesh. So talk both about public-private partnership from what some of the examples that we have heard from Cambridge, from Jaideep, but you have catalyzed a lot of public-private partnerships in Bangladesh. So problems from the industry, partnership by the industry with academia, with the government, and then creating brilliant and demonstrable results, not only for Bangladesh and other sectors, but also for other countries. But also how I would say this unlearning business. So what does it mean to unlearn? Because unless we can sort of clear our head of things that we knew or the way we were doing this before, we cannot learn new things or new approaches, perhaps.
Okay, thank you. You see, public-private partnership in Bangladesh, and especially in this sector, education and online education, it's been wonderful because, you see, first of all, we're able to go online so easily because the government made Bangladesh in the past 10, 12 years, digital Bangladesh. And that is why, since the present government did it, and that is why we could make this transformation so easily, because our learners, our teachers, everyone had access. Almost everyone had access to the devices, and the whole infrastructure is already there. So we could utilize that. Then when we looked at our contents, as Anid said, that we have hundreds of thousands of teachers who are already developing their own contents. And there is this teachers portal that is there, but they were not suitable for television. And we were using basically television for our secondary education classes. So we started with the help of A2I. We started to record these classes with the help of the teachers. And now what we have found out that we can make the contents really more appropriate, more attractive. Learning can become more joyful, which we're actually also looking for. Uh, if we make the contents as such. And there are so many education startups in Bangladesh now, and there is under the patronage of the government, and it is under one of our ministries, the ICT ministry, that there is a startup, Bangladesh Startup Company Limited, and they have all these startups, and all these are run by all these youngsters who have all these bright ideas and exposures and everything, and they're just wonderful. And so we are so excited. We're now collaborating with them. They are creating the contents which are completely aligned to our national curriculum and textbook board curricula. So nothing can be better. So we are now collaborating with them. We are taking contents from them, and from this month, and from August, it's going to be there on television, and also for online classes. We are going to have these contents from our startups, local startups, and so it's and also we are collaborating with our telcos, and we are in negotiation with them, trying to make the internet more affordable. So it's a truly a public-private partnership, and so that we can our all our learners, each and every one of them, regardless of what their financial status is, they can access this education. So in fact, going into this online education, I think we have made it possible for all our learners to come on board. And so many of them who maybe we lost them because of many social economic reasons, but now they can all be on board. So it's as I said, this is a crisis, yes, but it's a huge opportunity for us as well. In our traditional method of learning, what we are told that we learn something and we learn it for life. This is our knowledge that we carry for our life. That was our traditional learning. But now, with this fast changing world, with this, the change is now it's change is the only constant. I mean, that's always been the case, but now the pace of change has increased tremendously. And with the fourth industrial revolution there, I think now we have to learn that how to learn. So because we have to learn constantly, there are new things that are coming up constantly, and for that new thing we need to learn the new things. A lot of times we'll have to learn it in a new way as well, and in order to do that, be able to do that, we have to unlearn some of the things that we have learned. So we have to unlearn that, okay, we don't, whatever we learned is not going to work now in my work world. So I have to learn new things. So, okay, I do not do it this way anymore because it's become obsolete. So we unlearn and we relearn new things, new way of doing things, new way of thinking, new way of learning even. So, and that is how we have to adapt. And I think the way we are moving ahead, I think if we can think about these things, just think what our young learners, what wonders they can do, because they know so much better than we do, and they can do things so much better than we do. So I'm really very optimistic that through this process, because for Bangladesh, we have lost on all three previous industrial revolutions. But this one, we cannot afford to miss out. And we have to be able to um, face all the challenges that it brings with it, and we have to prepare ourselves. And I think this COVID has created a situation, an environment, has brought these tremendous changes in our mindset, in all the stakeholders, that we are now, I think, truly getting prepared to face all the challenges that fourth industrial revolution is going to give us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deepmoni. So the learning, unlearning bit, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was telling me about her 5.5-year-old son. He does simultaneous equations that he's learned in the last 3 months from Khan Academy, a 5-year-old child. So he learned some things that we learned in like latter part of high school. So quite remarkable. So that's the bit of learning, unlearning. He probably did not unlearn anything. He just learned it simultaneous equations. Dr. Alfredo, I think Dr. Jaideep talked about the 2-day courses, and then maybe nano learning, micro learning. These concepts are emerging now. So do you see the value of degrees in future? So do we need a bachelor's degree? Do we need a master's degree? Do we have to have traditional high school that we must complete? What should our CV look like? What should our resume look like in future?
Yes, I do believe that we need those type of degrees. And please understand me, I am not communist as a first step, but we need to change capitalism. I am very much afraid of partnership with industries, because at the end of the day, the industries take those investigations and take those researchers and go to make their own business, forgetting the people that was working there. So let us see the vaccine now, the COVID vaccine. Now they are fighting because I know there are money under the table from the US to some pharmaceutical companies trying to get the first 100 million of vaccines. And this is not fair. We need to have good researchers, but working on a full-time job with good salaries, and to get good salaries for them, not to abandon their career and to go ahead with that. We need money. I am going again to that. In 1440, Cosimo de' Medici founded the Italian Florentine Academy. And what for? Because the universities, at that time, University of Bologna was teaching, and I was professor in that university. And I know they have good degrees, good students, good people, but no investigating, not researching. So we need people to go in deep, because this is the new world in which we are going to live. As Her Excellency said, we need to unlearn what is past and to learn and to relearn, because things are moving, are muting every day. And our world was mutating since 5 billion of years. So this is not a new thing, the COVID. Again, this is something new that came because we already have forgotten what happened in the last 2 centuries. So now there are some researchers that are going to make very good things on nano studies, on new devices. In robotics, you know that at the end of this century, we have 50% of all the work did by robotics. So it is incomprehensible if we do not invest in this type of research. Some professions are going to disappear. And what do we need titles for these degrees? So we have to rethink all universities, learning, teaching, and because some professions, for instance, public accountants, tax advisors, are going to disappear because robots are going to make that job. The medical assistance now online is so common, is so standard, that doctors are not going to receive more visits on their offices. So if we don't think that we are changing, not because of the COVID, I told you, the COVID helped us to discover what is hidden for the last centuries. And again, beware with the companies, because companies are looking just for profits, not for a better situation of the community. And we have to work together. This Dhaka forum that is excellent, why it is not developed in London by Londoners in Berlin or in Sao Paulo, Brazil, for instance, because they are not investigating, they are not analyzing what we are living. And it is not for us. It's for the next generations that we need to live a world that they could live. Otherwise, they would like to go to Mars or to Jupiter. It is very, very important to understand that we have to change our habits, our way of living, and of course, it will be seen on the next 1 or 2 years.
Great. We are coming to the end of our session, but I'm still curious of what my son's resume will look like. So he finished high school, and so he took a break. He's been visiting me in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
He lives in New York. Finished high school, but in the last few months, he's been working with data scientists, postdocs, and faculty members in Harvard, Columbia, and Berkeley. And because he never switches on his video, they don't know how old he is. So he doesn't want to go back to university. So what will his resume look like, Jedi? What should he do?
Great question. So your son is clearly, at the frontier. He is the way the future is already. So I would say, and this is a personal view, I think we will still have universities like the old style universities where people go there for maybe 3 years at the start of their careers after they finish schooling. They will meet other people of their age from different parts of the world. They will engage with their faculty in classrooms. I think there is something very human that compels us to be in proximity with other people. We learn a lot, not necessarily in the classroom, but outside the classroom, in the playing fields, in while doing theater and music, and even while eating together, dining together. So I think there is that formative experience that universities provide. And you may get a degree at the end of it, and people will still want to know where you studied and what you studied, and that will be on his CV. But that said, I think what your son is doing is also going to be on CVs of the future. So their education will not and cannot stop with a bachelor's or a master's in person in a university. But they will have lots of other, as you put it, nano courses, short courses. Some may be 2 days, some may be 5 days, some may be a few weeks long, which they will take throughout their lives. because your son will have to constantly update his skills. He may choose to move careers, move sectors, move disciplines, because that is where the excitement is. So on his CV, over time, he will keep adding these short programs which he has taken online, or maybe visiting over the summer for a few days, a university from somewhere in the world, or a company internship. He may start his own company. So all these things will go into his CV. And what you will see is continuous working, where he is constantly shifting from one type of job to another. He may even have several jobs at the same time in parallel, but equally constantly changing nature of education. So constant upgrading of skills, often with these short courses taken from all kinds of providers, not just conventional universities. So that's my take, and I think your son is already there.
So not one world, but multiple worlds, parallel worlds of education and jobs and life that we will see in future. Great, thank you, Jadid. I'll convey your advice to my son. May I go to Dr. Dipumoni? So Dr. Alfredo said, beware of companies. How do we do public-private partnership if we don't partner with companies?
The advice that Dr. Alfredo gave, I think it's very important to remember that the companies, they are there to make profits. But we also need to collaborate, because we need to, for a country like ours, especially, to create employment, to make our graduates easily employable, because employability is a major factor especially for our graduates. And so we need to collaborate with them. With their help, we can redesign our courses, make them more employable, make our graduates more employable. But definitely, obviously, they will make profits, but that it should not be such a collaboration where only that profit-making intentions take over the whole purpose of education. That should not happen. While we are trying to give our students the required skills to be more employable, we should not lose sight of our bigger picture, the main idea of education. So we have to be at the public sector, as the deliverer of public goods, must remain vigilant. While we have to do these public-private partnerships, we must be always very, very vigilant about our duties, our responsibilities to our citizens. We have to do that. And as for as Professor Prabhu said, I also believe that it's not never the online education is not going to be an alternative. It is actually going to become complementary, because of our necessities, because of our changing times, changing requirements. These will, this online education and the traditional, our education, these will be complementing each other, not become an alternative. I don't believe that this world will become devoid of universities. I don't want to live in a world like that. So there will be universities, there will be great institutions like where he's teaching. All these great institutions will be there, and there will be, because these are the cradles of knowledge creation and all that. So we would have all these institutions, but side by side, we will also have online education, so that we can cater to the changing needs of many sections of our population who cannot come to the classes. So we take the classes to them.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. So we take the classes to them. and the future of education will be blended. It won't be one or the other. So we are still seeing many evolving situations in education. So thank you for that vision. Dr. Alfred, I want to come to you last on the issue of funding, which you have really emphasized, the research. So what if we make it such that the industry academic collaboration only produces public good? So whatever is produced, let's say it's a vaccine, let's say it's a ventilator in the context of COVID right now, in very important elements that we must do research on. And what if whatever the research output is, it has to be made into a public good that's open, it cannot be patented and closed. So open content, open research, open materials. Is that a direction that we can mandate the industrial partners?
Thank you. Indeed, we need open research, open studies. We have coined a word that is deconstruction. That means that to construct something, you have to destroy previously what we want to rebuild. So to deconstruct something, it is necessary to have, again, good students, full-time students, devoted to the investigation, and very open. There is a group, for instance, in Houston, Texas, that meets every Friday by this type of digital platform. 200 scientists studying the COVID problems. Every Friday, 200 from 10 or 15 countries, different countries. So it is necessary to go to that openly, not depending from the sources of the industry. Excuse me, I am very much afraid of that because I suffer that. The industry wants to have profits, not to make research. And the three more important industries in the world, important in the sense of money that they are producing, the pharmaceutical one, the weapons one, and the drugs one. They do not think on the people. They are thinking on their profits. And the pharmaceutical, I know them very indeed because we have been doing works with them, and they don't want to share what they have. Now AstraZeneca is fighting to fix the price of the vaccine they are going to deliver by the end of the year, it is supposed. So it's a money problem, it's a profit problem. So we need to be open, but on a worldwide basis. An academy in Bangladesh, an academy in Buenos Aires, an academy in London on this matter, not in biological matters, but in this type of matters that Her Excellency has been discussing, how to learn, how to unlearn. So we must be open with a lot of papers, a lot of things to teach and to learn. And now that we have this possibility to use digital platforms, it is important to spread out what we know. I have 3 PhD, and it is nothing for me because I learn every day. I teach, but I am learning every day on different matters, on different things that you have been talking. To make nano products, you need to know about physics, about biologics, about complex systems. We are working on complexity, and it is a field that you cannot see the horizon. It's so interesting and so much good for the life of people that you must go inside but make it broad, but make it open. And this is very important. So if we can leave something to the new generations, we are over. I am over, at least. We need to teach them to make something good. My granddaughter wants to go to MIT, excuse me.
Mhm.
You know why? Because she knew that inside the Massachusetts International Technology, she could find a good job, not because she is going to have a good instruction. And it is all of us, we are passing the same matter. So this is what we need to do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alfredo. All three of our panelists, Dr. Alfredo, Dr. Deepamani, and Professor Jaideep Prabhu, for the panel that we just had, Reviving Education and Intellectualism, for the Dhaka Forum, the virtual conference on COVID-19 emergence, post-COVID-19 emergence. So I will do grave injustice if I try to summarize that very rich discussion and debate that we just had. But I'll just like to end with just a thought. I think what you've talked about is open education, unleashed opportunities, and parallel worlds for everybody. So we won't see one world, we'll see parallel worlds of education, research, and employment, and entrepreneurship. Thank you very much, all the panelists.